Today's podcast is brought to you by one of the absolute best real estate agents in the Cleveland market, Tom Sugar with Howard Hanna Real Estate. Tom's here to help you understand the home buying and selling process. He's here to ensure that you're also always going to get the best price, whether you're buying a home or whether you're selling a home, and his customer service skills are top notch. Give Tom a call at 216-406-2841. That's 216-406-2841. You can call or text him or visit his website, shugsells.com, SHUGSELLS.com. Visit Tom Sugar, everybody. He is the best.
College is going to be what you make out of it. Nobody's going to give you amazing opportunities. If you want to do something, go tell a professor or someone, I want to do this.
Bad boy, baby. Ralph Tresvant. Mickey Smalls. Listen.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Eric Swinderman. He is an Emmy-nominated writer, director, and producer. Most recently, and notably, directed and wrote the 2021 film The Enormity of Life, starring Breckenmeyer, Emily Kinney, and Giselle Eisenberg. What a movie!
Oh, thank you.
I was like blown away when you had originally sent me the link. I was like, man, you're working with some serious names in here. How did you network to get with these people? How did this movie come about? I really just want to dive into that start.
Yeah, so you got to go all the way back to a movie I did in 2012 called Made in Cleveland.
Okay.
And that movie, it was intended to be a collaboration of Cleveland-based filmmakers. And it was really just supposed to be no budget. Just like, let's see if all of us filmmakers can get together, get along, network, make this thing together. And it grew because I had met a director by the name of David Wayne, who most people know, who wrote and directed Wet Hot American Summer, Role Models.
Oh yeah.
And so I met David like in 2006 or something like that, and we kept in touch a little bit, and then I asked him to come to Cleveland. He's from Shaker Heights. I asked him to come to Cleveland. I was doing a screenwriting workshop, and I said it would be cool if you could come and just do like a Q&A and give advice and about how to make it as a screenwriter in Hollywood and all that. And so he did. He came, and we while we were there, while he was in town, we talked about doing this project. He said we should do a movie, like a Cleveland movie, and get all the Clevelanders. So he said we'll get Halle Berry and Molly Shannon and Drew Carey and all the big, Cleveland people. And I said that would be awesome. So that's how Made in Cleveland. That was how it was born.
It all started.
Concept. And so we started putting together. I started reaching out to filmmakers in the area whose work I had seen that I respected or whatever, and we started putting together this plan to do 10 short films, vignettes in one feature.
Okay.
And they all have the theme of love in Cleveland.
Okay.
So there was a movie out at the time called New York, I Love You, and another one called Paris, Je t'aime. And there was a very similar concept. It was a bunch of famous actors and directors making films about New York and Paris, and then they would just sort of put them all together. And that was the concept. So the film was originally called Cleveland, I Love You. And we did that movie. But David was doing a bunch of projects at the time, and he had 2 shows on Adult Swim. And so he kind of had to bow out. But I think he felt bad because the reason why a lot of filmmakers came on board to the project was David Wayne was attached to it.
Of course.
So he said, I have this friend, Jamie Babbitt, who is from Shaker as well, but she's directing United States of Terror with Steven Spielberg, Gilmore Girls, Gossip Girl, The Middle.
I didn't realize there were so many like Cleveland.
Yeah,
like
Shaker is like
damn.
Hollywood,
Seriously.
So I called Jamie and said, hey, David gave me your number and said, you might want to do like a little vignette in this project. And Jamie at the time was dating Carrie Dornetto, who was writing on Modern Family and Community.
Yeah.
And so Jamie said, yeah, I'd love to come to Cleveland and do this thing. And then, so we started talking about what story, what script she might do. And then she came up with this one that she wanted to do. So she said, okay, so go ahead and start casting for this in Cleveland. So we started casting for the one that she was going to direct. And then she emails me maybe a week later and says, Busy Phillips wants to do it. And I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, right.
So all of a sudden, my little project that doesn't really have any money, any budget, was just supposed to be an experiment, was a real full-fledged movie because it has a bona fide star.
Right.
You know, I mean, Busy at the time had done Freaks and Geeks and Dawson's Creek and ER. So she was like legit. And we were like, wow. So then they said, okay, we need to cast for her sister. So start casting people to play Busy's sister. And then 2 days later, she calls and says, Gillian Jacobs wants to do it. And I was like, from Community, like my favorite show on television.
Right.
Britta wants to do it. And she's like, yeah. So next thing I know, we're full on SAG project, you know, changing everything. Like none of us, this was my first feature. I made a couple shorts that made a little bit of noise.
Right.
You know? But this was my first feature. And I don't know how to make a feature film with 2 stars.
What year is this?
This is 2011 when it all started.
Because I was telling Eric before when we all started, I was like, the first time I heard your name was it was Progressive Field probably at the time.
Yeah.
But throwing out the first pitch, did you throw a strike?
I did not.
You did not.
I did not, but I was a pitcher in college.
Oh no shit! Where?
But at Walsh University.
No way.
I actually got redshirted my first year because I got injured, and then I.
But you were good enough to play.
I was good enough
That's all that
to
matters.
make the team, but I never actually threw a pitch in college because I got injured, and then I got into film and quit. But that's another story. But I threw it as hard as I could because I was like, when am I ever going to get a chance to try to throw a fastball?
Shout out to you because some people really go up there and they lob it.
Yeah,
you know.
I actually, I'm embarrassed to say, I practiced for a week. I pitched my whole life.
I would have too.
And I was like, I don't remember how to throw a pitch anymore because it had been a good 10 years.
Especially, did you throw like off the mound or like in front of it?
Off the mound. I was like, I'm throwing off the rubber.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wind up.
Probably seems a lot farther when you get up there.
You know, it's the same distance as in high school, but it looks bigger.
Yeah, it looks bigger, right?
But so Busy and Gillian are now on board, and I'm like, I don't know how to make a feature film. Like I know how to write something. I know how to point a camera and direct actors, but I don't know how to produce.
Right.
Now, the whole concept of that film was supposed to be that each filmmaker that we hired was supposed to make their own film, and based on our guidelines and our approving scripts and stuff, and then we'd put it all together in editing. Problem is, none of the filmmakers that we had brought on were really producers. I mean, as you know, most independent filmmakers, they point a camera and they shoot. And they probably are more gearheads than they are producers.
100%.
Like they know the cameras, they know the lighting, but they don't know how to really produce. And so none of them did. And so this small little project that I was just supposed to be sort of the figurehead for, I ended up producing 11 short films simultaneously.
Damn. Now, did you end up producing them because you were like, you realized that was the situation?
I was the only person
yeah, so you were like, I got to do it.
And because none of the, I mean, nothing against the filmmakers, but we were all younger. I mean, this was 12 years ago. Nobody really knew what the hell they were doing. And I think in Cleveland, when things get real, like Busy Phillips and Gillian Jacobs come on the project, and David Wayne is sort of lingering in the background, I think people get really scared. I always said fear of success is not a real thing until I saw it in the film world, in the independent film world, where people, I don't know if it's sort of fear of success, but they stay in their comfort zone so that they can't fail. And
that's the worst, though.
Good at being unknown.
Yeah, and that's like, I think brings me to a point there, like even like for me personally, like to get outside my comfort zone has been the most important thing, right? Because like, is it easy to necessarily sit down and ask questions or, you know, talk to sometimes you get uncomfortable talking to somebody, whether, you know, you look up to them or, you know, they've done such amazing things, and it could be intimidating, you know what I mean? So I think That's a big part of it too. But I think when you get outside that comfort zone, you grow so much. And once you realize that, like for me right now, I don't want to go anywhere near my comfort zone, right? I want to keep trying to step outside of it. Was that the first time that you felt that, or was that the first time that you felt like you were really getting out there and putting yourself out there?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'd made a couple shorts that won a few awards and stuff. And
Right.
so people kind of knew my name a little bit in the local film community, right?
Okay.
Which is what it is. But like if I went into a mixer or something like that, people usually knew like some stuff that I had done. But that was when we took it to the next level, and now I will be the first to say, final product made in Cleveland, it's a real so-so film. It was made on a $50,000 budget.
That's nothing.
Busy and Gillian worked for scale, and so they were here for 2 days. So I barely paid them anything. I paid for their flights.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have to pay for their hotel because I convinced the hotel to give them free rooms.
See, that's the best right there. But that's
like,
what you got to do, though.
I'll tweet about you.
Yeah, like it's something.
So that movie was made on a $50,000 budget. So the end product, I look at it and I watch it now and I say, oh man, look at all the sacrifices we made that didn't go into the movie.
Right.
And I just see a decently executed movie with some good acting, some so-so acting.
Right.
But what it did for me was it put me on the map. I mean, Cleveland had movie fever at the time. The Avengers had just been shot here. Alex Cross, Fun Size, all these sort of big movies had been shot here right at the time that we were going into production. And for some reason, the Cleveland media was lumping us in with them.
Really?
Yeah, it was like, Hollywood's coming to Cleveland.
Because I saw
already here.
I was gonna say, because when I was doing research on you, if you just look your name up, it says there's a thing. It says it's like an interview. I think it's Hollywood and Cleveland or whatever it is.
No, I mean, Busy and Gillian are Hollywood.
Hell yeah, no. So here's a question, I gotta ask this: is it? You say like some of those actors or actresses, there's some good actors, some shitty acting, whatever it might be. Is that tough to tell a good actor or a good actress that you're not doing what we want you to be doing, or is everybody's different? I'm assuming in your approach, but
like if they're a seasoned actor like Brecken or someone like that.
Yeah.
Like who am I to tell Breckenmeyer?
I kind of gotta wonder, yeah.
Yeah, I think I started that way.
Okay.
Of like, oh my gosh, who am I to tell Breckenmeyer that I didn't like the way he said that line or whatever. But honestly, when you start working with actors of that caliber, that just doesn't happen.
Really?
They don't do anything that you don't like.
They're harder on themselves.
You might say, hey, let's try it a different way, but it wasn't that the first take was bad. It was just it could be something as simple as, it's also tough when you wrote it, that you hear the line in your head and you think, oh, I know what words should be emphasized there or whatever. But really, the funny thing with Brecken was his first take was always great. And then it's all right, well, let's do one for safety. And then we do another take, and he would want to do take after take after take because he wasn't happy with his performance.
Which you'd rather have that probably in somebody.
Yeah, there'd be times where I'd be like, Brecken, we're good. I'm happy with that. Let's move on. And he'd be like, just let me do one more. Give me some direction, man. I'm like, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, and when you work with actors like that, that's the difference between working with them and working with local actors. There are local actors who have talent.
Right.
But I don't know, there's just this level of preparedness from people who make their living off of acting where they come in and it's just a different level. Like, I flew out to LA before we started shooting and took Brecken, Emily, and Giselle out to dinner because I had actually never met them when we cast them because, my people talked to their people and,
right.
and our casting director talked to their agents and they set everything up. I was sort of involved in more like, I like that person, I like that person, I like that person, but we didn't audition any of them because I already knew what all of them could do, and if they were willing to do our movie and I liked them, then we were going to go with them. So the first time I met them, we flew out to LA and just met at a restaurant and sat there for about 4 hours, eating, drinking, and just talking about what I had envisioned for this project,
right?
How it was going to go, and it was so crazy. It was an aha moment as I was sitting there surrounded by 3 actors that I legitimately were at that moment was DVRing their shows.
Yeah, so you're a real fan.
Like The Walking Dead with Emily Kinney.
That's wild.
That was one of my top DVR shows. Life in Pieces with Giselle Eisenberg.
Yep.
I was DVRing at the time, and Designated Survivor, which Brecken was on at that time. So I'm like surrounded by people who I watch every week on television, and they all know every word of my script that I wrote 4 years ago.
Do you think a lot of these actors and actresses, when they come in, and I mean, maybe this is the difference, do you think they dive, like, I mean, they know the role that they're going to be in, they understand, they've read the script. Do you think the difference is like they have, I'm going to become this person for this role?
Absolutely. At least Brecken did. I mean, that was his big thing at dinner that night was, I don't want to play this the way, people might expect me to play it.
Right.
He plays a man who's suicidal, he's bipolar. He said, I don't want to play some emotionless zombie, right?
Right.
But
Because it's even in the trailer, it says a story without feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Brecken, I remember Emily, had production assistants coming to her hotel at night to read lines with her. Like, they were in Cleveland for 3 weeks, and they didn't go out and party. They went down to Barrio and got tacos.
Yeah.
Brecken, I think, took an Uber one night to Mitchell's and got ice cream or something like that.
Good call.
But by and large, they were in their hotel rooms studying their
That's the
lines.
difference, though.
That is the difference.
They're not out partying, getting fucked up. And that's, I think, like a lot of people, I mean, I'm guilty of it for sure. Over the summer, I was going after it too hard. And it's funny because you end up spending, instead of a Super Bowl Sunday out getting messed up, you know what I mean? Let's do something productive.
Yeah.
And I think that's also the difference too when you get probably just anybody working in general, when that's more important to them, they understand the assignment, they understand why they're here.
I mean, Giselle Eisenberg was 11 at the time.
That's crazy.
And by the way, everybody, her performance is amazing. She was 11 at the time, and I'm telling you what, I can count on one hand the amount of quote-unquote local actors that have come to a set as prepared or as engaged as she was.
Were you surprised about that?
A little, partially no, because I knew her already. We'd hung out a little bit, and we talked a little bit, and I'd seen her performances on other things. So I knew she was the real deal. I knew she was a legitimate prodigy. But at the same time, then you pull back, and my daughter at the time was 11, so she was the same age, and was also getting into acting. And I remember saying over and over to my daughter, if you want to do this, that's who you model. You do what she does.
That's awesome.
And so there would be so many times when my daughter was like doing something maybe unproductive. I said, do you think Giselle would be doing that right now?
Yeah.
Or do you think
But she looked up to her, so that makes that
and
difference.
They text each other still.
That's
So
awesome.
She got very excited that she got to hang out with Brecken Meyer from Clueless, and she got to and she has Giselle's phone number and all that stuff. So
That's such a big thing to have a mentor. You know what I mean? Or someone to look up to. Now, you grew up around here, right? Lakewood? Where are you from?
For a long time, but I grew up in a town called New Philadelphia.
I've heard of it.
Which is about 100 miles south of here, just below Canton.
Okay, yeah, I have heard of that.
About 20 minutes from the Football Hall of Fame, but 20 minutes south of the Football Hall of Fame.
What made you come up to like Northeast Ohio?
Well, I went off to college in Walsh University, which is in North Canton, and I spent 2 years there. When I decided I wasn't going to play baseball anymore, obviously I was giving up a scholarship.
Yeah.
And I couldn't afford to go to Walsh because, Walsh is a private school.
It's expensive, yeah.
Even expensive in the 90s. I can't even imagine what it is right now.
Probably a lot.
I just decided, I've always loved Cleveland. Obviously, I was a big Cleveland sports fan.
Right.
To me, Cleveland was the big city. I grew up in a town of like 17,000 people.
So this is a total change of pace for you at the time when you're coming up here.
I'll just move to Cleveland. And I was like, that's kind of like, if I want to go to LA or New York, Cleveland would probably be a good starter city.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I just said, I'll just transfer to Cleveland State. It's a really cheap school. I think it was like $1,700 a semester or something.
Oh, hell yeah. That's at that time?
Yeah. Or maybe $1,700 a quarter. I think they were on quarters back then.
Still, though.
But still, so I was like, okay, that I could do. Like, I could get a part-time job and pay for college,
Yeah.
So I moved up to Cleveland. After I moved in, I couldn't find an apartment on short notice. So I moved into the dorm, which I was kind of pissed about because I was going to be a junior. I was like, I've already done the dorm thing.
I'm out on the dorm thing.
But I moved into the dorm, and by the time it was all said and done, I had my books. I was registered. I had $75
Well,
in my pocket. It was all I had in the world. It was $75.
damn.
And I was here in Cleveland, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to finish school and do it. So I've lived everywhere in Northeast Ohio. I've lived in Cleveland. I live in Cleveland now. I live in West Park now. I live in Lakewood for a long time. I lived in Parma. I've lived in North Royalton. I think that's all the places. But yeah,
I love Lakewood, and West Park is one of my favorite places actually around here.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just, you really meet some true Clevelanders there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You talk about like blue collar, you got a lot of cops and firefighters over there.
Yeah, the neighborhood I'm in, I was told, was like a long time cop neighborhood.
Yeah, a lot of them
That's
are.
where they all bought houses so they could live in the district or whatever.
It's like, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's like the old Irish mob on Lake Avenue back in the day, right? They all lived in the same
Yeah,
spot.
we like it. It's eclectic. It's close to things. It's like 11 minutes from here, from the studio. So it's convenient.
What was, so you, I mean, we have the studio here. At what point were you like, I want to get a studio, I want to make a studio? And you said this is nonprofit. Is that what you said?
Well, portions of
it
are nonprofit. We run the Young Filmmakers Academy,
Right.
and that's the nonprofit. We're a film school for kids and teens. We offer programs on cinematography, screenwriting, acting. We have a summer camp that we do. That's sort of what our claim to fame is. We have a 3-week long summer camp that the kids write, direct, and edit a film, and then we have a big red carpet premiere.
What ages are those that you?
Our advanced camp is 12 to 17, so basically middle school and high school.
Okay.
And last year we started a beginners camp, which is 8 to 11.
Okay.
And that's a little bit less intensive. It's only a week. They don't write the script. We have a script prepared for them, but they just learn how to shoot it and act in it and edit it, and then that sort of is like the sort of smaller film to the big film. So they both
Right.
get the red carpet premiere.
I'm sure working with younger kids is challenging. You ever had a kid come through though that you've seen? You're like, damn, like they are really good.
Well, that's really, I think, what is gaining a lot of traction for us is that our kids are going off. We had a kid last year get into NYU film school.
Oh Jesus.
I mean, that's like the hardest film school.
I was just gonna say I don't even know much about it, but I know that that's a hard one to get into.
She was with us for our first 2 years that we were here, and she's off and running with that. We've had at least 2 other students go off to film school, get into film school. We have one right now, Marshall, who's on the poster for our most previous film. I know he's auditioning at Juilliard and some other places. So, yeah, I mean, all of our kids are on a track. We have this kid named Van, who basically, I'm executive producing this kid show, and he's coming in, and it's like it's his show. Like the first day we were filming the show, I mean, he just was off and running. He was setting up the camera shots, and I was just like stepping back and going, all right, I guess I'll go.
That's gotta be a proud moment for you though too. You know, I mean, so who was your mentor growing up? Like who'd you look up to? You're like I love that, or want to, you know, was it like a Martin Scorsese or like you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I went off to college, not thinking about being a filmmaker. That was not my plans. I was gonna play baseball, get drafted by the Cleveland Indians.
Going to the MLB, baby. Hell yeah.
That's what I was gonna do. And my freshman year, I got injured. I wasn't even playing baseball. I was sled riding.
Oh, for real?
And I injured myself, and I basically knew I was going to get redshirted because I couldn't perform. And, I grew up, when you get to college to play ball, that meant you were one of the best players on your high school team.
Mm-hmm.
Meant you were traveling on those all-star teams in the Little League. Like, you were kind of the shit, right? Like,
Absolutely.
You play ball. And so the idea of spending a year on a team and not playing, I don't think I could mentally handle that. And I don't think I had the drive to play ball if I wasn't playing ball.
It's a tough place to be because it's more of like, hey, you're not going to play this year, but we want you to work harder than you've ever worked before.
Yeah, and rehab your injury.
Yeah.
So one day I'm rehabbing, and I have to, before they can let me back on the field or something, this is a long time ago, this is 25 years ago, they, I know I was running on the track, and I had to run like a mile, and I had to run it a certain time.
Yeah.
Or I had to come back and do it the next day, right? And it was winter, and it was one of those cold days where like the sweat is like freezing to your face.
Yeah, dude, that's the worst.
And my back is hurting, and my leg is hurting, and I'm running, and I'm like, man, this sucks.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And I remember I just running, and I got to like where the gate of the track was, and I just kept going. And I went back to my dorm. I got out in the shower because I was freezing. Took a hot shower, and the next day I went into the coach's office and said, yeah, I think I'm done.
That was
I
it?
said, I don't think I have this in me anymore. And to preface that, I had started taking film classes and stuff, and that was sort of starting to take over my interest. Because that was in January when I quit. But in September or October, so a couple months before, I was out with a bunch of guys on a Friday night or whatever, sitting at a Taco Bell, and they're like, what are we going to do tonight? And then one guy who was a little bit older than the rest of us, he was a little more worldly than we were, and he's like, oh, that new Quentin Tarantino movie's coming out. It was Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
I had never heard of Quentin Tarantino.
What a movie.
I had never heard of Reservoir Dogs. And I was like, sure. I remember I'd seen the trailer, but I didn't know anything about it. And we went, and I was literally sitting in the movie going, holy shit. Like, I cannot believe that movies like this are being made. Because
right.
People who weren't even born at that time don't understand. I mean, it had to have been like the way people who were alive when the Beatles hit. It had to have been the way they felt about seeing them play for the first time.
Okay, I understand.
You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, people are doing that? Like, to me, when I see the Beatles, I'm not that impressed.
I get it.
Because things have progressed and music has changed.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, well, and I've heard plenty of people who sound like the Beatles. But if you had never heard anybody who sounded like the Beatles, that would have been an amazing, life-changing moment for you.
Yeah, it's like a first timer, like.
And so the first time I saw Pulp Fiction, nobody had made a movie like that. And I said, holy crap, I can actually do that? And that's whenever I kind of walked out of the theater thinking maybe I'm done with baseball. And I sort of tried to hang on. I mean, baseball is all I knew my whole life.
Right.
It was my whole life for a long time.
How fast were you throwing?
Like, when I was in college, maybe like 91.
Damn, you were touching 90. I never touched. I got to like 86,
High
I think.
school, like maybe the low to mid 80s, but then, you know, you get to college and you got real trainers and stuff.
You don't realize, people don't realize either, like when you go up to bat, like the difference between, you know, seeing like an 85 mile an hour fastball and like a 92, 93 mile an hour fastball. I mean, it's a big difference,
and
you know, in the movement too.
In the early 90s when I was at Walsh, like 91 was respectable because you didn't have these guys throwing 100 miles an hour like you do now. Like right now, every team practically has a guy who throws 100. And when I was a kid, if you threw 100, you were a fake guy named Ricky Vaughn, right?
Yeah, for real.
Nolan Ryan, you know.
Didn't even touch that, really.
Maybe in the early days before radar, we didn't know what he was throwing. But
That's
anyway,
true.
I digress. So I quit everything, and I just threw myself full force, became the film guy, surrounded myself with other film students, and we would sit in cafes and just talk about things we wanted to make and projects we wanted to do. And
just the obsession kind of began.
And this was in the 90s, so we didn't even have the ability to do anything we said we wanted to do because there was no digital video. It was all film. There was no Mac, you know, editing software. It was all editing for real. So I didn't even touch an piece of editing software until I graduated college.
So when you were getting out of the baseball field, you know, getting out of baseball, going into film, mentally, where were you? Were you confused? Were you like, or were you like excited? Because like,
I think I was super excited because the pressure was off.
Right.
Like, now I could just learn this new thing. And I kind of realized when I got to college that I knew more about filmmaking than I thought I did. Because I guess when I was a kid, I watched movies differently than my friends did. But I didn't know I was watching it differently. But I realized when I look back on it, yeah, I understood dialogue. I understood music choices. I understood editing and pacing. I didn't know I understood it until I started to do it, and I was like, oh, yeah. I mean, I know how to do this because of that movie that I watched when I was 9. You know, and it was one of those weird things where I guess my brain was just drawn to that type of thing. So I think that's why I became a screenwriter, is because I just was obsessed with how movie dialogue was written, and how it's written in a way that's like there's a cadence to it and a rhythm to it. And I was really into like iambic pentameter and stuff. And so I was like, yeah, you write in these rhythms, and sometimes you choose a word because of how many syllables it has, not because it's the right word. And it was this weird thing that I was like, yeah, I get that. And then so I just thrown myself into that and started watching movies that by the time when I was 19 years old and in college, I'd never watched Casablanca.
Yeah,
I'd never watched any of those old films, Dog Day Afternoon and stuff. So I just started throwing myself into stuff, and they're going to but there was pre-internet. There was a little bit of internet, but not a lot of internet. So I would go to these stores that are kind of like Borders that don't exist anymore, called Media Play. And they were these big, giant bookstores with coffee shops. And the first time I had seen that type of thing.
Right.
And their entertainment section had all these scripts, that you could buy. So I was like buying movie scripts. So I bought the Pulp Fiction script, and I just studied it and just read it.
That's
over
wild.
and over.
I didn't know you could like buy those. That's crazy.
Yeah, you can still go today. You can buy most of the big movies will print their scripts and put them out there for sale and have a nice little cover and some pictures.
See, that's unbelievable. So, what's the first movie you ever wrote? Like,
I wrote
and was it up to par for where you're at now? Because I know how the first ones go.
I wrote this shitty script called "What Goes Around Comes Around," and it was a complete Tarantino ripoff, right? Like I was just trying to write like Quentin Tarantino would write, but I wanted to do. I will say this: one thing that I like to do is combine genres.
Okay.
Like if you look at Enormity, like if it were at a Blockbuster, which is dating myself.
It's like dark humor.
What wall would it be on? Would you put it in comedy? Would you put it in drama? Right? Like that's how I like to.
I mean, it's literally, it's funny you say that, because even when I think about it now, it's so much of both.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because there's very serious moments, but it's also a comedy.
Right.
Which is really cool too. That's got to be cool to create
Brecken
that.
calls it a traumedy.
Yeah, it's great.
It's about trauma and drama and comedy. But so I wrote this movie, and it was supposed to be like this romantic comedy that turns into like a horror movie at the end.
Yeah, okay.
And I was like writing. So basically, it was a total ripoff of like When Harry Met Sally, Mad About You was a big show at the time that I was into, and like just I don't know, some kind of horrible. It was awful, and I still have it. And I remember I took it to Kinko's, and I bound it, and I put the nice little clear cover on it.
You're so proud of yourself.
Yeah, and I was like, I have a script, and I was trying to, figure out how to pitch it to studios and stuff. And I still have it because I like to read it every once in a while.
Of course.
I suck. And everybody should write a sucky script for their first script, because everybody is going to write a sucky script, and that's fine. And we tried to make it. We tried to make it back in '96. I got some people together, and we tried to shoot it on like SVHS, because I had heard an interview where Quentin had shot a movie on SVHS and then transferred it to 16 millimeter.
Oh, really?
To make it look like film.
It's like back then.
That was back when video, you couldn't shoot at 24 frames per second. You could only shoot at 30 frames per second on video, and so therefore everything looked like a home movie.
No shit.
So he would send it off to Kodak and have it transferred professionally to 16 millimeter, and then he said it would just look like a cheap, low budget 16 millimeter movie, but it would still look like you shot it on film. And so that was my big plan. I had heard an interview with him do that, and I was like, that's what I'm doing.
That's what you're gonna do.
And I think we shot a little bit of it. I cast actors from Cleveland State, just to do it, and it just fell apart, and it never got made. And I'm sure I have a tape somewhere.
Yeah, I was gonna say you got to dig that up at some point
in a storage
for your your retirement party one day, right?
Yeah. So that was kind of the end of that, and it's just now that I have that script in a bin somewhere, in a basement somewhere.
In the middle of the 90s, I mean, there's no like this wasn't possible, right? Like I couldn't just come in here, set up a podcast and throw it down with you and then have it on YouTube, or you know what I mean? You did it like what I would consider like the hard way. You're right, because I mean you had to network correctly. This is probably even pre or right when cell phones are even like coming out, right? So like your networking is real. It's in person. All these connections you're making are in person, stuff like that. How do you feel now when you see a lot of these different actors and actresses or YouTubers or influencers coming up? Do you look at it? You're like, damn. You have it so much easier, and you have no idea how much harder it is to really do it.
The other thing is that these influencers, they don't have any talent at all.
It's weird.
I try to stay away from things. We're trying to get more onto TikTok for the school.
I get it.
Just because you can get so many eyes on things.
Yeah.
But I don't do it. We have people that do our social media and stuff like that. So we're trying to, and we just actually hired a new social media person. So we're kind of trying to delve into that TikTok world. But I try to stay away from it because it feels just so fabricated.
Right.
But I somehow, when I go on Instagram, every once in a while, I'm there just to see what people I follow are doing. But every once in a while, something pops up on your feed that you click on and you instantly regret it.
Of course.
And then you go down this rabbit hole of like scrolling through all these, what do they call them, reels?
Yeah.
And you start scrolling, and every reel is just some scantily clad girl telling you about her new sunglasses.
Isn't it unbelievable?
Because she's gonna get rich by people paying her to say that she likes their sunglasses, and we're all supposed to care because she has a flat stomach, and extensions or whatever. And I'm like, that's not like a real thing. It's not, and that can't be sustainable.
I feel like the whole sex sells era, like at some point it's going to get boring. Does that make sense?
Sex sells has always been a thing, and the thing about America is that we have to embrace it and disgrace it.
We do.
We still do it.
Yeah.
But then we have to pretend like we're repulsed by it.
Yep.
Right? It's like we're the ones doing it.
That's an amazing way you just put that. That's exactly it.
We put everybody out there and make them a sex symbol.
Yeah.
And then we go, oh, that's so. Why would she do that? It's like because we're paying her to do it.
I mean, it's so true.
Some executive at some thing said it would be really cool if, a bunch of horny guys bought our product.
And that's like, I think the other side with, like, it's true. Like, you go on Instagram, anything, it's half naked chicks. It's, and like, have you seen The Social Dilemma?
I haven't. A lot of people have talked about it. I have not seen
I think that would be something interesting for you to watch based on your take, because it's amazing the way these, because I mean, The Social Dilemma, it has like CEOs and VPs from like Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, like all these former employees. That's who's doing the interview. And they're talking about how absolutely fucking dangerous social media is, because it's essentially like, it's predetermined to what you like, what you've seen, what is going on, what your friend, you know what I mean? And I mean, it's if you really looked at it, it's and you watch the movie, it goes to show you how much work that these different companies have done just to keep you staring at your screen. Yeah. And it's kind of fucked up.
And to determine what you're staring at.
100%.
I mean, people who think, these people are like, oh, I did my own research on COVID.
Yeah, like...
No, you had an algorithm did your research for you, and they told you what you should think about it.
Yeah.
And if you're really liberal, you're going to get a bunch of news articles about how the COVID vaccine is saving lives. If you're really conservative, you're going to get a bunch of stuff about how Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks that COVID's a hoax, It's just, it's insane. So I used to be really active on, like, Facebook with political shit and stuff.
Right.
I probably lost some friendships over it and stuff. But I had a daughter, 3.5 years ago, who's just absolutely everything for me, and she just put everything into perspective. Like, none of this shit matters.
It doesn't.
Like, I'm not gonna change anybody's opinion about what they think or what. I mean, the algorithms have already gotten to them. So I go onto Facebook to conduct business.
Mm-hmm.
I have like 5, companies that we run on Facebook.
Right.
And I go there to share pictures of my daughter with my relatives who I don't see. You know, that's basically
And that's
it.
great though, because like you do. I mean, I think anybody who's been on social media for any amount of time knows this. There's no winning, ever. You know, like, and you can have an opinion, and I think you get the endorphins releasing when you get a couple likes or whatever it might be. It's like, oh, all these people agree with me, but the reality of it is like, you're right. It
I'll
doesn't
tell
matter.
The
You know.
level of toxicity in my life that has gone away since I stepped away from social media. I mean, I deleted my Twitter.
Yeah.
I just recently deleted the Twitter around the time of like Elon Musk taking over and stuff. I think.
Oh
it was
yeah,
just,
yeah.
Really crazy, and it just became like Lord of the Flies in there. And it just
He
wasn't.
let like a
there
lot
was
of people
nothing-
back on.
There was nothing positive about Twitter. It's the most toxic place on earth.
All of it is though too. Like you look at, what's going to be really interesting. And like I said, I have a 6-year-old son, and he goes on YouTube on his iPad and stuff like that. And I watch what he does, but you're not going to catch everything. And if you think you are, you're fucking lying to yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see what kind of repercussions the world we live in now, social media wise, is going to have in 20 years
They're
on these
already doing
kids.
studies and saying that these kids are messed up. That Instagram has destroyed these kids because it's every single second of their day is a popularity contest.
Yep.
Every single second. And it's funny. I was watching Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee last night.
Oh yeah, it's a great one.
I love that show. And he was with Patton Oswalt, and Patton has a young kid, and Jerry has kids and stuff, and they were talking about it. And Patton was talking about something that he did in front of his kid that the thing that's going to screw them up is not what you think it is.
I believe
So in
that.
other words, you can sit there and go, I'm going to protect them from this, I'm going to protect them from that, but the one thing that's going to screw them up is going to be the one thing you never thought of.
I just wonder too, like, I mean, that's a very great point you just made. I just wonder too, like, do you think like with these different social media platforms and stuff, and as a parent, you can relate to this. Do you think that those guys, I mean, do you think there's ever going to come a point where everybody goes, all right, like this is too far, like this is getting too fucked up, and like, do you think maybe ever those social media platforms would ever get shut down?
It'll take the worst tragedy you can imagine for that to happen. And I'm talking like, a dirty bomb being set off in New York.
Yeah.
And it was directly linked to a network on Twitter.
Yeah, like something
that.
fucking insane.
That's how that's how far gone we are in this country, that it would take, I mean, come on. How many millions have died from COVID? And you can attribute a lot of it to misinformation.
Oh, yeah.
And we've done nothing. We haven't made a single. I mean, the people who scream the loudest about free speech are the people who absolutely don't understand what free speech means.
I agree, actually.
They've never read the First Amendment. They don't even actually know what the words are. But they scream free speech because they think free speech means say anything you want, anytime you want, to anyone you want without repercussions.
Right.
And that's not what it meant, not what it means. And you can definitely say at least, hundreds of thousands of people died as a result of misinformation on the internet.
100%.
How many people who were 280 pounds with diabetes didn't wear a mask or didn't get a vaccine and are dead now?
A ton.
They're fucking dead.
Yeah.
And think about that. 1 million people in the United States died. More than that.
More than that, yeah.
But at least 1 million died. So that's 1 million people dead. But that's tens of millions of people affected because of them having family, them having coworkers, them having clients. I mean, tens of millions of people were affected by COVID deaths, and we did nothing.
Literally not. Now, how did COVID affect your mental health?
Not well. I was fine being kind of locked away for a while because I'm kind of a homebody myself,
Right.
And I'm kind of a private person.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh well, this is just. I mean, and my daughter had just been born.
Oh, so it was kind of nice in a way.
She was born in 2019, so she was about 8 months old or something like that.
Wow.
When it hit, maybe right about a year.
Which that was probably really scary too. The unknown with having a
Well,
newborn
that's
too.
Yeah, that's why I was totally locked in because I was like, I don't know if her little 1-year-old body could handle getting COVID.
Yeah.
So we were very strict at the house. We masked up everywhere. We only, it was constant. I mean, I probably kept a couple Purell manufacturers in business, you know.
Yeah.
We were just very serious about it. But I ended up I got COVID in like a year and a half ago. I avoided it for a long time. And then I let my guard down. My hometown theater, theater from the town I grew up in, wanted to screen The Enormity of Life.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was the theater that I saw my very first movie in. Like literally the building and
So that meant a lot to you.
where I saw my very first movie. And I thought, what a full circle to come, and what a cathartic moment that will be to see like my biggest achievement in the place where it all started for me.
Yeah.
And seeing and then hearing.
Giving me chills just thinking about that. It's probably amazing.
So I got down there, and that was middle of COVID. It was September of 2021.
Okay.
So COVID was still
Full swing.
And I went down there, and after the movie was over, you know, you do the Q&A, and I was all the way down at the bus. So I was still feeling comfortable, and I got out in the lobby, and it's one of those small 2 theater buildings.
Okay.
You come in, there's a theater to the left, there's a theater to the right, concession stand in the middle. Right?
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
So I go in there. Theater's still operating to this day. They just showed Made in Cleveland there last year. So every year now, I guess they
Toss it up there. That's awesome.
in. But I go down there and I come out of the theater, and oh my God, it is packed with people who like literally want my autograph and stuff.
How exciting is that?
Well, yeah, and that was the problem, is that I totally went all to my head. I let my guard down.
Yep.
And they fucking gave me COVID. Like, I swear to God, 3 days later.
I was going to say how long after until you were like, bam, this is what
I was like,
happened.
these are the only fucking people's faces I've seen in a year. And
Of course,
I've got COVID.
fucking naturally.
And I'm diabetic, so I had to really worry about it. So my doctor, who we have a good relationship, he understands my medical history, immediately admitted me to this facility to get that cocktail that they pump into you. So I got stuff that other people don't get. They put an IV in me, and for an hour they pumped in the anti-COVID stuff.
No shit.
And gone.
Really? You felt like a million times better?
Oh my God. Like, I remember just being like so hungry, like my immune system was firing on all cylinders.
Really?
Dude,
Dude, I had it over Christmas.
Yeah?
Yeah, not this past year. I think it was a year before. Yeah, I was with my ex. My ex, and we both had got it. And I don't think either of us were really feeling like shit. But, dude, it was scary because I got my 6-year-old. She was working at a hospital, so I mean, you get a lot of situations going on.
Got it.
No
She
way.
tested positive, and she got fever, and she couldn't be vaccinated. She's vaccinated now,
Yeah.
but she wasn't vaccinated. There was no child vaccine at the time.
Yeah.
Every other vaccine that every child has gotten before they get to kindergarten, and all of a sudden this is the one because Donald fucking Trump.
I sit right in the middle. I really do. I'm not really like hardcore liberal or hardcore Republican. I kind of see. I don't even vote, and a lot of people are like, "Well, you shouldn't have an opinion," and that's great. But I don't vote personally because I don't want to be a part of it. But I think it's very interesting to listen to like somebody like that who's so right wing try to tell you about it, and then hearing a doctor on the other end going, no, this is killing people. You have to do it. And my kid's mom only ended up getting her vaccine because the Cleveland Clinic was like, you have to get it. Yeah. Otherwise you can't work here.
She's vaccinated for everything.
Like, do you think they're just mass producing? First of all, no one could not. There's no way that many people that would have been involved to produce something like that could keep their mouth shut. There's no fucking way. Someone would leak it. There's no way. Like,
people who work at
it's
the
crazy.
CDC were fucking science nerds in high school.
Yeah.
They were straight A students. They went to college. They studied science. Some of them went to med school. They studied medicine. They're just fucking doctors and scientists.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's no agenda. Scientists don't have agendas. They care about science.
And if they do have an agenda, it's let's help the well-being of the general public. You know what I mean? That's not even an agenda.
Just like a mission statement.
Yeah, it is.
I don't fucking understand how all of a sudden, like all of a sudden, for years, the most noble thing you could do was be a teacher.
Yeah.
Right?
Most underpaid job
if you were a teacher,
in the world.
You were a hero.
Right.
Right? You were revered. Kids seeing your teacher out at school was like bumping into Ryan Gosling, right? It was like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah, you know what? You're right. It
That's
was.
my teacher.
Yeah, you get pumped.
Getting popcorn at the movies.
Yeah.
And yet now, teachers are indoctrinating the children, right? Teachers
Yeah.
are. It's like, no, they're not. They're doing their jobs. And telling somebody the truth about the Holocaust, it's not indoctrinating them. It's teaching history.
Do you worry about that when your daughter heads into school? Is like
I'll tell you what.
the curriculum and
So
stuff?
Today's podcast is brought to you by one of the absolute best real estate agents in the Cleveland market, Tom Sugar with Howard Hanna Real Estate. Tom's here to help you understand the home buying and selling process. He's here to ensure that you're also always going to get the best price, whether you're buying a home or whether you're selling a home, and his customer service skills are top notch. Give Tom a call at 216-406-2841. That's 216-406-2841. You can call or text him or visit his website, shugsells.com, SHUGSELLS.com. Visit Tom Sugar, everybody. He is the best.
It's weird for me because she's a COVID baby, right?
Right.
She's been home, right? We don't, I never would have put her into daycare anyway. Because
Right.
My wife and I, we're self-employed. So we don't
need it.
We can drag her around everywhere and she's pretty cool with it. However, it's really, not to take this into a too political discussion, but the whole gun problem we have in this country is preventing me from ever wanting to put my kid into a school until we fix it. And the fact is, we're never going to fix it.
It's scary.
The cool thing about this school is, like, it's not solely for LGBTQ, but that's sort of its focus.
Okay.
And so they definitely have a different attitude about school. There are days where my daughter will feel anxious and just say, I need to leave class and go sit out. They have like a little lobby.
Yeah.
And she's like, I need to just go sit out there for a minute, and they're fine with it. Or there'll be days where she wants to come in here and help me edit something.
Right.
And she just tells them, I'm coming in late tomorrow.
Right.
And she can go in and go right to her teacher the next day and get all of her stuff, and they'll give her time.
There's no like repercussion for it.
Right. It's not like you better be here or you're truant.
Right.
That's not even, I don't even know that my daughter would know the word truant. So it works for her. Plus she has a lot of outside interests. She's done acting and she's done some stuff. So it frees her up a little bit to pursue things that she wants to do after school.
Which I think is like,
Or after high school.
I like that idea of kind of having a little bit more flexibility with it, or just like a little bit more independence. Because I feel like a lot of times too, when you're in school like that, they're shoving down all this information down your throat, and you're just trying to take in what you can to pass this test, right? It's not necessarily this is a passion or I give a shit about it.
Like when it's mandatory to be there every single day of your life, it doesn't. I mean, I don't know. I think we've passed that.
It kind of puts you in that 9-to-5 box.
Yeah, but the
Right?
problem is, in this country, we don't want to change anything. The one thing I will say that even this school falls into problem is they're still teaching shit that they were teaching me when I was in 10th grade.
For real?
That's not relevant anymore. Like, in this world, does a 10th grader need to know about, like, erosion and deltas and sedimentary rock?
That's my whole point. Is like that's the kind of shit where like if you're interested in it, fucking rock on, dude. I'm all about it. But like, let's do this.
And it seems like every year they just cover the same eras.
It is.
Like they don't, like nobody wants to cover slavery, right?
No.
But it's like, oh, right now my daughter, I think she said they're studying the Roaring Twenties. Like why?
Why? Yeah.
I mean, yes, that's a thing that happened, but so what? I mean,
What can we do? I mean, I guess it's good to understand the past to move forward, I suppose. But to harp on
I'm
it.
sure the aspects that they're talking about in the Roaring Twenties are the dance moves.
Well, they probably put on the Great Gatsby and call it a
they're
day.
not talking about like the true depression and
Right.
and all that other stuff. But I mean, teach them. I don't know. It's weird. I remember thinking like, oh, I want to be really involved in her education because my parents really weren't.
Right.
Like, I could come home. I didn't get serious about my education until I was like a senior in high school.
Okay.
Maybe a junior. No, I feel like I had to be smart. All my friends were really smart. So we had 3 valedictorians and 3 salutatorians
Okay.
at our graduation.
So you're some smart people,
And
man.
I was good friends with all 6 of them, like in my close circle.
Okay.
And I wasn't even close to that.
Oh, really? Yeah, I get it.
I wasn't in the mentions for that one. So I was just sort of like being smart enough. Like I was not dumb. I just didn't care about school.
Right.
I mean, I think I was always, funny and articulate and quick-witted and stuff, but I wasn't a good studier. I didn't care about that stuff. And so I had to do it well to fake it so my friends didn't think I was an idiot.
Right.
Because back then, book smart was the only smart that counted.
See, and so that kind of leads me to my next question, because you make some super interesting points. You had gone to college. What is I'll give you my opinion first. I think if you're going to go to college, it's phenomenal, but I think you should know what you're going for. Like for me, I'd gone back to college to be a teacher, and I would still love at some point to be a teacher. And then I found this, and I became fucking obsessed, right? And like I feel like once you find that obsession, that's great. So if you find that obsession before you decide to go to school, that's great. I know some people say, "Oh, I found it in school." For you, what would your advice be to somebody who's like in that debacle of like, hey, I don't know where to go. Do I go to school and just do it because my parents want me to, or do I follow maybe another path and figure out really what I want to do?
Well, what I would tell people is going to college is more than likely not going to get you a job.
Right.
Like I could.
Which was pushed on, I'm sure, your generation, definitely mine.
Was told, if you don't go to college, Bill Clinton was in office. Pell Grant was just becoming a thing. It was becoming more affordable to go to college because more money was being made available.
Okay.
So it became less of an economic thing or status thing, because in my graduating class, I would say 90% went to college.
Oh, really?
And I graduated with 400 kids.
I'd say that's the same. I graduated with 233 at Rocky River, and 95% went.
Yeah, we all went. But we were sold a bill of goods that didn't exist. You're going to go to college and you'll make $1 million more in your lifetime than someone who didn't go to college.
Yep. That's actually how it was pitched, though, too.
It was.
Yeah.
That was the exact stat. Now, I could right now apply somewhere and say that I graduated magna cum laude from Harvard. You're not going to check.
No.
Unless you're applying for like an academic position where they ask for your transcripts.
Of course.
But if you're applying for just any job, if I say I want a job as director of marketing at Sony,
Wherever.
maybe Sony's different, but like let's say Sherwin-Williams, right?
Right.
No, I bet you HR at Sherwin-Williams isn't
Going to call Harvard and take a look.
and look it up. They're just going to go, wow, that's great. And if I can go in there and lie about it, great. So going to college most likely is not going to get you a job. But we had a student here at the academy who went off to film school, and the advice I gave her was, college is going to be what you make out of it. Nobody's going to give you amazing opportunities. If you want to do something, go tell a professor or someone, I want to do this. I want to do this project.
I mean, that's like literally what you have to do, because I think as a kid or as a student, sometimes you're expecting it to come to you or them to come to you, and it's just not how that works.
No, you have, I remember going to professors and saying, I want to do this project, and I know that at the time our college had certain things called independent study.
Yep.
And you could create a class for yourself that was basically just a project. So I was like, I want to do the sketch comedy show and turn it into get a credit for it, right? And I did. And then, so I would say, going there is great. You're going to meet people, especially if you come from a small town. You got to get out. You got to
go.
Darker skin than you, and speak different languages than you, and have different worldviews, and come from different governments, and had healthcare in other countries. You have to meet those people, because there's a meme that I've seen going around that says, get out of your hometown at least for a little while, because there's more to life than the same 10 people in the same 10 bars that were there when you went. And I have a lot of people that I went to high school with ended up going back to my hometown.
I moved out for a while too. I moved to Miami. I moved to Dallas, and I think I mean, I couldn't agree more because I was surrounded with being down in South Florida, Haitian people from the earthquake.
It's so funny you say that. One of the first people I met in college was a guy from Haiti,
Really?
and it was during that whole thing.
Spoke like French Creole and the whole
It was
thing,
like
huh?
during that whole Haiti conflict. You know,
Oh yeah.
when Bill Clinton was in office.
They've never been doing great down there.
And I just remember just talking to him and just learning different I have Muslim friends that I met in college. We don't hate each other.
No.
I'm atheist, so I don't.
I
think everybody who has a religion is off the rocker, so it doesn't really matter what religion it is.
I was raised Catholic, man, and I think it is. In my family, I didn't get my son baptized or anything like that because I think Catholicism is the biggest cult of all fucking time, in my opinion. I think Joe Rogan has like one of my favorite quotes. He's like, I knew something to the effect of like, I knew something was off when you're like, repeating whatever the guy dressed like a wizard says or whatever, And so, I don't know. I haven't done a ton of studying on religion. I listened to like Andy Stanley.
I've done a shit ton of research on religion because I tend to write about it a lot in my films and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating thing to me. I don't believe a word of it, but I'm fascinated by people who believe it.
Right.
I'm fascinated by people who live their lives by it. So I researched it a lot, so I could create characters and understand how they think about it.
Right.
But to me, it's all BS.
What's the biggest bullshit religion in your opinion?
Well, they're all bullshit.
I do really agree for the most part. I really do.
Say out loud, there's an invisible man who lives in the clouds who watches over me every second of every day from
Right.
the day I'm born until the day I die, cares who I sleep with, cares what kind of meat I eat, and is going to throw me into a pit of hell if I do either one of those things he doesn't like. If you say that out loud 3 times fast, you'll probably
That's fucking
become
hilarious.
atheist, right?
That's
Although my
fucking
big
funny.
joke is like
That's fucking actually
I
hilarious.
used to say, back before you were allowed to say you were atheist.
Yeah.
There was like a time where it was easier to, I think, say you were gay than it was to say you were an atheist.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't fly.
But you could say, so I used to joke and say, I'm agnostic. I would be atheist, but I've seen Jennifer Love Hewitt, so there's a chance there's a God.
Yeah. I mean,
That was
she is
just my
smoking
joke
fucking
of
hot.
rolling over my atheist.
I'm more of a Jennifer Lawrence kind of guy.
Yeah, Jennifer Lawrence.
She's got it going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think all religion is wacky. To me, it's such a silly concept. And this is, and I was gonna write a sketch that I never actually wrote, but I pitched it a couple times. So like, when you study religion, you learn that the story of Christ is plagiarized.
Yes.
And there was an exact same story 1,000 years before about a virgin birth and then the resurrection and all that stuff. So,
Lost me at virgin birth.
but then you say 1,000 years later, and if you know this, if you know that the story of Christ was told 1,000 years before, doesn't it ever occur to you that like, wait a minute, then this one can't be true because it's already been told completely differently, but now it's under a different thing. So the sketch that I actually was pitching was,
Couldn't agree with you more
it's
on
like
that.
going into a movie studio and saying, all right, I got a movie I want to pitch you. It's about this kid and this like doctor, scientist guy, and they build a time machine. And they go, oh, like Back to the Future. No. It's not like Back to the Future. It's a completely different movie. So they have this time machine, and they build it out of a car. Like let's say, and the guy goes, like a DeLorean. No, that's not a bad idea. Yeah. Okay. So they build a time machine out of a DeLorean, and they go back in time, and they're like, you're telling me the story of Back to the Future.
Of course.
And what? No, it's a completely new thought. We're gonna make this movie, and they're like, is the kid's name Marty? No, it's Morty.
Yeah.
And it's Dr. Brown, Doc Black. That's his name. And they're like, no, so that's to me like religion.
Well, it's weird how it's like, I think also what's frustrating for me is how the stories have changed through the years, right? Like, and that's where it really lost me, where when we start adding things with no, like, Like what? It's not like, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's not like the priest at Saint Chris went over to fucking the Holy Land and found something new out. Now we're gonna add it to the, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The weird thing about religion is it was created to control people,
Right.
to make people fearful, so that they would stay in line, and to this day, it's still serving that purpose. And the sad part is that I believe that most people who call themselves religious, in their heart of hearts, know it's bullshit.
Yeah, I agree.
But there is a peace that comes to them of saying, it's out of my hands. I don't have to take accountability. I don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
Because it's already predestined.
I think where I also struggle with it is in Catholicism. It's like, wait a second. So I can go sin all week long, right? And be dumb and do things that God considers a sin all day long. And then I come see you on Sunday and you just tell me, I'm good to go. All your sins are clear. It's like, wait a second. No. Like, there has to be some sort of accountability after the fact, right?
Yeah. The other part of me is the cherry picking.
Yeah.
Right? If you read, like, the book of, like, Leviticus,
Okay.
there's I think 72 sins in that book. Give or take a few, right?
Okay.
It's something like 72 different sins that are, like, mortal or whatever.
Yeah.
Being gay is one of them,
I knew that.
but also there's 71 others that nobody is in Congress trying to prevent people. So wearing clothing made out of two types of fabric
Right.
is an equal sin to homosexuality.
No fucking wild.
Eating shrimp is an equal sin to homosexuality. Getting a tattoo is an equal sin to homosexuality. Growing two types of crops in the same field is an equal sin to homosexuality.
Wow.
When was the last time some fucking Republican congressman went up there and said, I want to start a bill that said farmers can only grow corn, and if they grow potatoes, they're going to hell, and we're going to tax the shit out of them.
Well, these politicians nowadays just as well as I do. It's a popularity contest, number one. And people aren't becoming politicians to be politicians.
They're coming to politicians to fundraise.
To fundraise. And that's it. Like, look at, like, fucking Nancy Pelosi and all the money that she's stolen throughout the years. And you look at fucking Hillary Clinton, and any politician. It's not even specific to them necessarily, right? But like, wow, like you guys have a shit ton of money on this insane salary. It's because you did all this fundraising. You know what I mean?
Well, it's not even fundraising. That's just illegal.
Or donations or whatever they call it.
But yeah, or bribe money or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But going back to all the other stuff, the school shootings and stuff like that. I mean, obviously we covered that in Enormity, and it was something that we felt we wanted to cover, but without being preachy about it.
Right.
It started off as it was just going to be. I mean, initially the characters of Jess and Jules were supposed to be minor characters in the film, but I liked them a lot, and we
ramped it up,
expanded that out, and so initially her knowing all those statistics about guns and stuff, that was just supposed to be a quirk for an interesting scene, and it just expanded out and became more about what the movie was about.
What's your next like film? Like, what do you, I mean, if you can tell me at least, obviously you don't want to give it all away, but what are you working on now, that you're excited for? Like, what are you looking forward to in life? I guess would be a better question.
We're in development, on a streaming series right now.
Okay.
That we've been writing really for 3 years, because it started right before the pandemic hit, and we were meeting, regularly with some other writers to put together this show. And Emily Kinney is she's somewhat involved. She's attached as an executive producer and potentially to be in the first season.
Oh, sweet.
So we've been writing that, and then the pandemic hit, and we weren't really able to get together as much. And I'm not a big fan of Zoom when it comes to creative
Yeah, it's probably tough.
stuff. The thing about writing with other writers is when that moment hits where everybody jives on the new idea, and there's just an energy in the room. People are standing up now. You know, there's just this thing of like, fuck, yeah, that's the idea.
Yep.
You don't get that on Zoom. On Zoom,
No.
you got 4 writers sitting there talking. You go, well, what if she did this?
Okay.
Yeah, that could work. You know, that's how it goes. But when you're in a room, in a writer's room with people, and somebody says, oh, what if she does this? And everybody's, fuck yeah, and then this could happen, and that, and everything changes. And when we didn't have that, it just kind of, it died out a little bit.
I believe it.
We all took a little break, and then when things opened up, we got back on board, but some of the people had kind of moved on to some other stuff. So then we almost kind of had to start over. And then new ideas had started to creep in, and then we rewrote everything.
Right.
So we've blown it up a couple times. And now we're writing a series. We're writing a 10-episode first season. But the whole arc has completely changed from the idea that we had 3 years ago. And it's almost an unrecognizable series.
Really, based on what you had at first.
Yeah. So, but we're trying to get back in the horn. I just brought on a new writer who to put some fresh eyes on some stuff that we've already written.
It's always good.
And so we're excited about that. But you know, I've been you know, a little bit bogged down with you know, opening this place up and everything. But the thing about my career trajectory is, you know, I've done 2 films, 2 features in 10 years, right? And Enormity I wrote in 2015.
Really?
And we didn't start shooting until 2018. And it didn't come out until 2021. And because of COVID, we actually didn't like what our distributor was doing, so we sued them.
Oh, really?
Got out of our contract, hired another distributor, and it got re-released in 2022.
No
So
shit.
it took 7 years from the time that I registered the script with the WGA to the time that it was really out there.
It really actually got out there, and I agree with the stuff with you talking. Like when you're in person, it makes such a difference. Like I mean, I won't do a podcast over Zoom. People have been like, "Oh, let's do one over Zoom," and I'm like, "It
Ton of
sucks."
those during the pandemic.
Yeah.
made a movie and
It's just not the same.
no, it's not. So I guess my point is on that movie. It took me 7 years to do that, and I feel like episodic is where I want to go right now.
Really?
Because obviously people aren't going to the movies anymore.
No, they're not. All those cinemas are shutting down.
Yeah, they're streaming. Episodic. If you can land a deal where you've got 1 to 3 seasons, and you've got a gig, you've got an everyday job, right? You've got some security. You can go into work every day. It's not that grind of getting this movie out. I mean, making a movie can be really depressing, you know.
That's so go into that. I talk about that because I was curious from somebody who's never written, like, I mean, definitely not a film. So it's interesting to, it's crazy to watch a movie and go, this is all like pre-planned. This is something that somebody had a vision on, and to be able to write something and then is one thing, but I think being able to then put it into film, it's got to be a whole different story.
Well, when you do an independent film, it's interesting because it starts off with this idea that everybody's excited about, right?
Okay.
And then you bring all these people into the fold that you want to work with. And then you become a family, right? You work and you work and you work, and then as the person who sort of created this film and put it all together, you know, I was the writer, I was the director, and I was the main producer, right? So I had a hand in every decision that went into that movie.
Right.
And you are constant, and you have the most invested, right? I have the most invested in this film in terms of what it can do for my career, what it can do for this, what it can do for that. Everybody else, they have some invested, but not to the same extent.
Of course.
And you have to constantly be the cheerleader for the project to keep everybody as focused and as excited and as gung-ho as you can. And they are, if you know how to lead people, you can lead them into that battle, right? And then slowly, that project those people start to whittle away, right?
They do.
Right, so pre-production is over, so those people aren't really involved anymore. Now we're filming, we've got all these actors, we've got all these crew, and then production is over and those people go away. And then you're kind of down to a couple producers who are still sort of involved in things. And then you get into the editing room, and one day you're sitting there with your editor, and you realize it's just the two of you in the room. That's who's left. You and this other guy, or other woman. And you're sitting there and you're editing your film, and other people have kind of, they're still there, they're still involved, but they've all moved on to other projects, right? And now it's you, and you might call them up and say, hey, I'm going to send you some footage, or do you want to come into the studio and watch this cut or whatever? But you kind of feel very alone at that point, where like everybody else has had the opportunity to move on to something else because they were kind of a hired gun.
Right.
And you are still living and breathing it, but now it feels like it's just you. Sometimes you feel like you're the only person who's going to cross the finish line.
Right.
And it can be a little it can be a little depressing where you're like, man, where did everybody go?
Well, that's it. And like I feel like though anytime you do something great like that, for instance, it's lonely. Because like I can tell from like everything, everything you've got here, the whole setup and everything, I can tell you've worked hard, you know what I mean, for what you have. So it's like, and you tell you appreciate it. And I think that's great too, is that you have people around you that you're helping grow, that want you to do well. I'm a big believer in, there's a difference between people that want the best for you and people that believe in you, and I think it's really cool because you seem to really surround yourself with the right people. But I also can relate to, everybody is out and about doing their things with their friends or whatever it might be. And you're sitting because you got this dream, but yeah, it's a lonely process, and I believe it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at the top of the food chain on that project, you do end up
taking the brunt.
Being all by yourself at some point.
Was that your, like, I don't want to call it like your lowest point mentally, but was that a point mentally where you're sitting there, you're like what did you do to get out of that space?
I mean, I was always about getting the movie out. I had such a positive experience working with Brecken, working with Emily, working with Giselle, and them just believing in me. They had no reason to believe in me. They liked the script. That was it. They didn't know who I was. They liked the script, and so they did it. And then they came on board, and I obviously I think had to prove myself for the first
of course,
few days of filming that I could handle what they're used to. But I appreciated that these people who were at the caliber that they're at in their careers trusted me with their careers, right? Trusted me that I was going to put something out that was going to make them look good, and
of course,
make them perhaps more marketable, right? So that was my driving force. Like, these people, believed in me. These people that I looked up to, or Giselle looked down to.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Seriously, right.
But they believed in me enough to do it, and so I was going to make sure that I did right by them.
Right.
And then I had like a lot of crew members and stuff. A lot of them were hired guns that I probably haven't spoken to since. But my cinematographer, Sage O'Brien, he's co-writing and co-producing the series that we're writing with me, and he's never gone away. He's been there because Sage, honestly, if I'm being completely candid, he works for the Cleveland Clinic.
Okay.
And not in a film capacity. He's a brilliant cinematographer, but he doesn't do it full time. He works for the Cleveland Clinic. So there's nothing at stake for him. Like if this series, if I tomorrow say this series isn't going to happen, he's still got a nice job at one of the largest hospitals in the world, and he's fine.
So does
everybody else, they see me as a little bit of a, what can I do for them right now,
right,
in their career, and when there's nothing going on for them, I don't hear from them so much.
That's got to be kind of tough for you too, because you're probably then sitting there going, all right, well, what is this relationship then? And then like,
I feel like I want, like, anybody that I like.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be friends with them, right?
Of course.
More than just work, man. We should go out and get dinner. We should go out.
Yeah.
And and that's probably my fault of like, well, they've got other shit going on.
And you can't look at it like that for yourself, but I think that is tough because you do, especially when you've had the success you've had. where it's like, oh, well, like maybe I'll hit Eric up now because, or whatever. Because the reality of it is some of these people, I'm sure, if you were to hit somebody up you haven't spoken to in a long time and they haven't reached out to you because they don't give a shit how you're doing, they think of you as such a meal ticket, but you call them and you go, I got this amazing role for you, well, they're your best friend again.
Right.
And that's not, and that's got to be, and I'm sure there's two sides to it because there's also that part where it's like, hey, listen, maybe this person is like that, but they're perfect for the role.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Actors, I don't so much care if they do that because that's their job. They come to the set and they go.
Yeah.
But people that I've really invested in relationships in terms of producing and people that are really there, and then they kind of go away and you're, it does, I guess I sort of I sometimes expect more out of people than maybe they expect out of me from a personal relationship.
Well, you expect a lot out of yourself, I could tell. And so like you push yourself to the limit, and I think I had this discussion with a business owner the other day, and I was like, no one is going to care more about your business than yourself. I mean, it's just the way it is, right? It's your business, it's your baby. You can hire everybody you want to come in here, unless you give them some sort of vested interest in the business. The reality of it is that's you're gonna be the one that cares the most. Yeah. And I think it can be probably really tough to run a business like that, but specifically in this sort of setting where you're also given probably quite a few options on who you could use for different things. And then it's probably even tougher to dial in who's perfect for that.
Well, I'm at the point right now in my career where I kind of only work with the same people now.
That's great.
Like I'm not actively bringing new people into the fold.
Right.
Because I don't have when you're doing independent films and stuff, there's really no room for error of not working with the right person.
Right.
So, when you look at guys like Tarantino and the Coen brothers and people like that who constantly work with the same people over and over and over again, and they're just not just crew but cast too, you understand why. There's a comfort level of I trust you, you trust me, let's go do our thing.
And they understand what you're looking for too.
Yeah. So that's nice. The other issue I run into, by still being here, right? Everyone will say like, well, why are you still in Cleveland? Why haven't you moved, to LA or whatever it might be? First of all, it's a hell of a lot cheaper to make movies here.
Oh yeah.
Than it is. I mean, I have a lot of contacts in the acting world, right? In terms of like people with names and stuff that I can work with, but I don't live in a world where people come in with $1 million checks, right?
Right.
And say, let me just fund this whole thing. So we try to be budget conscious when we make stuff. Enormity was made on about a $400,000 budget. Well,
it looks like a bigger budget movie.
It was very strategic, and a lot of that was like Sage O'Brien, Mark Pauly, Patrick Antone, understanding what kind of look I wanted to and how to get it, the independent way.
Yeah.
So that we kind of had this strategy of get really good, well lit coverage shots and pick our moments when we wanted to get big.
Yeah.
And every scene kind of had one moment, so we weren't spending all day on one shot,
Which can be, I'm sure, also tough when you're not getting the shots that you want.
Yeah, but I mean, we pretty much shot the movie that we thought we were going to shoot. But where I run into issues with still being here in Cleveland is I can't do anything small anymore.
Right.
And what I mean by that is it's not because I did a big movie. It's because if I say, I just want to do this short little film that I just care about. It has nothing to do with making money or anything else. I just want to tell this story.
Okay.
Right? I want to spend a week shooting it, and then I'll just cut it together myself, and it'll just be, an art piece, right? I can't do that anymore because I always use, this is the example I use all the time. Let's say I need a sound guy, right? And the sound guy that I typically use, his name is Dave. He works out in Atlanta now.
Okay.
He was from Pittsburgh. He's crushing it out in Atlanta. He's killing it out there. He's my go-to.
There's a lot of great people in Atlanta. I was in Atlanta a couple weeks ago, and I love Atlanta.
Yeah, so he's my go-to sound guy. But on a project like Passion Project, I can't really afford to fly him out and all that stuff.
I get it.
So then I start going, okay, well let's see if we can hire a local sound guy, right? And there's this perception of independent filmmakers who've had the tiniest little bit of success, and I would say our success is the tiniest little bit of success. If there's a perception that I am rolling in money,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm not. We do okay.
Okay.
But the perception is that I am. And so if I say, "Hey, I'm looking for a sound guy," and I get all these resumes, I'm like, "Oh, cool."
Yeah.
And as soon as they see my name on it,
Stupid
they're
money.
$1,200 a day.
I believe it.
They're $1,200 a day. And I'm like, "Wait a minute, dude. I'm looking at your resume, and every film that you did was for the 48-hour film festival. Were you getting $1,200 a day for that? No. You've barely gotten paid to be a sound guy, but suddenly you're a $1,200 a day sound guy because it's me, and you think that I have money to piss away.
Right.
And I can't do any projects because everybody thinks that I can afford to pay them as if this is some big production Hollywood film. And I just stopped doing it.
Right.
We've put out a couple things recently where I've asked the people I'm working with not to mention my name as part of the project. I said, because it's going to derail the project. People are going to have a higher expectation of what the project is or could be.
Or could pay
It's
him.
just nothing. It's just a fun
Yeah.
project where I want to get together with some creative people and make something. And they get to do that because they've got a bunch of friends who don't make any money off their projects.
Right.
There's no expectation to make money. And it's super frustrating that, I mean, when we put casting notices out, I tell them, don't put my name on it, don't mention my company, Anadoni's Pictures.
Nothing, because as soon as you do, the dollar amount triples.
Yeah. And I actually had a sound guy who could have done all the sound for Enormity, agree to a day rate, and then when he came in to sign his contract and realized it was me, he like tripled his day rate.
Yeah, get the fuck out of here. That's what I would have
That
said.
meeting lasted 45 seconds.
I believe it.
I didn't say get the fuck out of here, but I might as well.
You might as well. Yeah. And it's just sad though, because people do that. That's what they want to do. They want to take advantage.
I had a DP
You know?
agree to a full project rate, and then we were sitting in the living room of one of the producers, as we were getting closer to filming, and all of a sudden he was wanting to double what he literally signed a letter of intent and an offer letter to do it for this rate. And we're sitting there, it's like 10 o'clock at night at this producer's house, and he's doubling his rate and asking like, well, can you get the money? Can you just... And literally, while I'm sitting there going, yeah, we could probably do it, I'm literally texting.
Yeah.
My other guy, Sage, and saying, hey, are you still interested in doing this?
Yeah.
And he's texting back like, yeah, call me tonight. And I was like, okay. I'm like, yeah. Let me see what I can do.
We'll chat soon, buddy.
And then when I left, I called him and I was like, do you want to do this? This is what I can offer you.
Yep.
And he said, I'll do it. And I texted the other guy. I said, look, we can't double that rate. I'm going to have to go with somebody else. I said, I didn't want, and I was like, not firing him.
Yeah,
I was
but
basically saying like, I don't want to waste your time. If we can't meet your needs, then I'll go with somebody who can. And that was it. And then all of a sudden they were like, oh no. And I was like,
yeah, of course, it's too
still,
late. Too late.
Offer's been extended to somebody else.
Yeah.
Because you tried to fucking price gouge me a month before we started filming.
So I have one final question for you, and you've been great, by the way. And I really appreciate you coming on here and taking the time out of your day, especially on a Sunday. As far as your mental health goes and like how you feel right now with all the amazing things that you've done and all your great accomplishments, and you seem to be like a super straight-headed guy who's just like has a really great passion. Where would you rate your happiness right now on a scale of 1 to 10? And what would you say, if it's not a 10, what would you say you could do to get it closer to a 10?
So, about a year ago, I know you wanted to talk about mental health and stuff, and Enormity is about mental health.
No, we do. You've done great. This is perfect.
But about a year ago,
This is a great podcast, for real.
I had an incident where I kind of lost my temper over the most minute thing, right? And I kind of lost my shit. And I was in the house. I think me and the wife and Ellie was there, and I couldn't calm down. And I knew I couldn't calm down. Like I was consciously,
Which is the worst,
I was
man.
consciously telling myself, why the fuck are you so worked up? Just
Yeah.
knock it off. And I couldn't. And it freaked me out because I like to be in control of things. And,
I'm the same way
and
though.
I
Man.
wasn't in control at that moment. And I remember I went back to bed. It was like 9 o'clock in the morning. And after I had that freak out, I went back to bed and I crashed till like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which I hadn't done in years and years. Called my doctor, set up an appointment, and he said that the fact that falling asleep for 4 hours like sort of reset me, told him what he needed to know. So he put me on Zoloft,
Oh yeah.
which I've been on, and it's definitely helped. Like if I forget to take my Zoloft in the morning, probably about 3 in the afternoon, I'll be aware of it because I'll notice things are
Off.
or I'm getting edgy or I'm getting...
It leaves your system quick. I was on 20 milligrams of Lexapro for a couple years, and I mean, I've had it all, man. Suicidal thoughts, the whole fucking thing. You know, alcohol, drug problems. I mean, not like, you know, I'm not shooting heroin, but I was definitely no stranger to an abundance of cocaine and alcohol. You know, just doing my thing. And I think once I finally got my, you know, clear-headed and started doing the right thing again, is when I was like considering going back on my meds, because ironically when I was off of them I was doing the wrong thing, right? So and it does kind of switch you up a little bit. So I'm still in between though, because I feel like I feel so much less motivated when I'm on them, but I also feel like maybe I wasn't on the right one.
Well, I had probably been on the meds for about 3 months, and then we hired this writer, this writer from Upright Citizens Brigade,
Yeah.
to come on to the project, and we were having these really intense writing sessions, and I realized like the meds were clouding my creativity. Like normally I can bang out 10 or 15 pages in a night if I'm really jazzed about the story.
Damn.
And I was really jazzed about this pilot, and I could not crank anything out. The way I could describe it is, so if you know my work, I'm a dialogue writer.
Right.
I like to write very intricate dialogue.
Yeah, it's not simple dialogue that you have. I understand
dialogue
that.
with a lot of nuance.
Yeah.
To it, and so that's what I consider my strong suit. And we're writing, or I'm going at home after these meetings and saying, okay, I'm going to crank out this stuff. And here's the best way I could describe it. If I were to tell you about the pilot, I could describe it to you from beginning to end as if I had watched it and I was just telling a friend, hey, you should see this show. This is what it happens.
Yeah.
But I couldn't hone in on the specifics of the scene in terms of what people were saying and to get, you know, all the nuances of it.
I get
could
it.
just tell you, this is the
Which
arc
is
of the
so
story.
important, right?
Yeah.
The nuances they're everything
And I
at the end of the day.
couldn't write anything. Like it was like I could see the characters in my head. I could see them in the location that they were in. I could see them talking, but I couldn't hear what they were saying.
Right.
Because in a weird way, I don't write dialogue. The characters write dialogue, and when I write, I become that character, and they just speak, and I just write, right? And I was like literally seeing these characters in my head, like in those dreams that you have where you can't speak.
Yeah.
They would be talking, and I could see their faces, I could see the set, I could see the camera angles, and nothing's coming out of their mouths when they're talking. And so I went off the Zoloft against my doctor's wishes.
Right.
And then I felt like my creativity started to come back, but I also felt like my mental health was also
Suffering.
eroding as well.
Oh yeah.
So we changed the dosage a little bit, and I feel like I'm still having these writer's blocks that I feel like I still attribute to the meds. But I'm also at a point where I've got an almost 4-year-old that I'm afraid of losing my shit in front of and having that be her memory of me.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't have an abusive stepdad, but I had a somewhat emotionally despondent and somewhat mentally abusive stepdad.
I understand. Yeah. Like emotional
It
abuse.
was like he had 2 kids of his own, and we all were a family.
Yeah.
But it was still this. They're my kids. And,
Yeah, I got you.
and it sort of fucked me up, you know, for a long time. About like just that, you know, I'm not wanted, I'm not loved.
Yeah, there's no bond there.
And I always said if I ever have a kid, that they're never gonna feel that. They're gonna know their father's love.
Yeah.
Right? They're gonna know that they're
Absolutely.
And so so that's really why I stay on the meds, and sort of maybe sacrifice a little bit of my creativity.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to. I just don't even want the option.
Yeah, I had made some definite decisions in front of my son when I was going through my situation. Even prior to that, just like stupid decisions, like lies that maybe I had told in front of him. One notably, like I had lied about whether I was smoking a cigarette or not outside of a bar or restaurant we were with my son. And I like hid the cigarettes. I was just trying to hide them from my ex. And my son was out there with me, and I'm like lying to my ex through my fucking teeth about I didn't smoke and all this shit. And then my son's like, oh, they're right there, you know? And I like looked like the biggest idiot of all time. And I think that's something that actually replays in my head often, probably at least once or twice a week now, because I'm like, I was so selfish at that time and just so like, I just didn't give a shit about anybody else but myself, you know? And it's like, what kind of lesson is that for him?
Yeah.
You know, and so like those are the kinds of things. But I understand the creativity block, and I understand.
And it's a weird thing because it's like my brain is split into two. The first half knows everything that's happening, and the second half says, "But how does it happen?" You know, and it questions everything, and it's like they're fighting each other, and it's like, man, if I could just. And that's why I keep. And I've never traditionally hired other writers because I could bang that stuff out.
Yeah.
I've been bringing other writers in because I need people who can kind of help unblock that side for me.
Which is good though that you're kind of trying to find ways around it too. You know, I think it's, and I appreciate you talking about it as well. Like just to note that because it's not an easy conversation. I think a lot of people like. I think one of the worst things I was ever called in my whole life, something that sticks with me, was somebody telling me on like an Instagram story, just fucking slamming me. She said, you're mentally ill. And she said it to the whole world. And I think that was like one time in my life where I was like, I felt so exposed and so vulnerable. And after that, I was like, even with this podcast, I'm like, I'm never going to let somebody hurt me again. I'm going to expose myself and make it vulnerable. And
I think we all just have, and there are people who are definitely mentally ill.
100%.
But then there are people who just have trauma, and it manifests itself in different ways.
Yeah.
And we more people have trauma than want to admit they have trauma. Once you can kind of look at your past and say, this is probably the root of my issues.
Right.
And be honest with yourself. And I've always been someone who was pretty honest with themselves. Self-evaluating. Yeah, I took Psych 101 for a semester. I probably got a C. So once you can like admit to yourself like where these things are coming from.
Yeah.
I mean, you might not be able to fix them, but at least you can deal with them and try to deal with them as healthy as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know I had abandonment issues. My real father left when I was a baby, and I met him once in my entire life. And then my stepfather kind of favored his kids over me. So,
Yeah.
So obviously I needed to go into show business so everybody would love me.
Yeah.
I need everybody to tell me how fucking amazing.
And I'm the same. You know what? Me and you are the same way in that. Where for me, because I had, my mom had multiple boyfriends, and I've moved over 34 times in my life. I'm 29. So like there was never a ton of stability. The most stable anything ever was actually with my stepdad at his house for that, couple years we were there. But yeah, that abandonment feeling, man, people don't, and if you don't,
it's not something that you actively.
No.
It just affects every decision that you make.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
You know that that's the reason until you finally realize it is.
Yeah. Do you know who Theo Von is?
Yeah.
So Theo has this quote, and it's like it's one of my favorite quotes. It's like it's not like he always says like I don't necessarily think I have like actual like chemical dependent issues with drugs. He's like, but how I'm feeling right now, or, how I'm feeling affects me so heavily right now that like you can't control anything else outside of that, right? So like when a situation comes up where triggers that, it's like nothing else in this whole world matters to you, and that's all that's all it is.
Yeah, and I don't drink, I don't do drugs.
Yeah.
I have maybe 3 drinks a year. Right.
It's a common theme with successful people is they don't booze.
But then then that means I have to cope naturally.
Yeah, that's true.
I can't shut it off.
You should smoke some weed. You smoke weed?
Right. I don't. I've never ingested anything other than a prescribed
drug
in my life. I've never smoked a joint, never smoked a cigarette.
Damn, I'm impressed with all that.
Every once in a while, I'll have, if we go out to dinner, and I'm talking 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
I'll order like an old fashioned or something like that.
I haven't had a drink in a while.
You know, my stepdad drank a lot,
Yeah.
and that really affected me because I saw how he was a functioning alcoholic.
Yeah.
He wasn't terrible. It just affected him.
Well, you don't realize it though right away. And then even for me, my father, he lives in Florida. He's a functioning alcoholic. He'd be the first one to tell you.
If I picture him now, he passed away in 2006.
Yeah.
But if I picture him right now, he's got a beer in his hand.
Yeah.
Like I can't picture him
Without a beer.
and like his breath always smelled like.
You always knew it.
glass.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'll order a Hams just because of the.
Really?
Like if I find a restaurant that has it, I kind of have to order it.
Yeah, just because you're there and it's what it
there,
is.
It's like taking me back to the 80s.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I cannot. If I think of him, I smell that beer breath,
Yeah.
right? I think of his beer belly, right?
Yeah, you know it.
And the bottle of Blatz that they used to come in these little barrel shapes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I didn't drink a drop of alcohol my freshman year of college in the dorm. But all my friends,
Probably the first one ever.
yeah, it's just I made that decision that I wasn't. Gonna
That's
do
good for you though, because having that kind of self-control and that discipline, I'm sure has taken you. You know what I mean? Even at that time, to be like, I'm not doing this. Even for me, I can't drink anymore, but making that decision that I'm not going to drink is so key, right? To be like, hey, it's Friday night. I'm gonna go hang out with my friends, but before I leave the house, I'm not drinking. I've made that
I
choice.
think that if it goes into why when I start projects, I finish projects.
Right.
Because there is that self-discipline and self-accountability that like, you know, yeah, I would like to be hanging out doing something fun, but I'm going to be at the studio till 11 o'clock tonight because I got to bang this shit.
Because you got shit to do.
So yeah, but it's interesting. I've always been interested in the self-evaluation of mental health and psychology. Cause
Yeah.
I think once you understand where your mind is, then you can get past it and
Move
you just have
on.
to be honest with yourself.
That was where I struggled, and I think and I really, really appreciate you sharing that stuff, because that is one of those things too where you're right. Until you acknowledge it yourself and then realize like I have to change, and then it's not just, oh my God, I have to change. It's like, now what are the actions you're going to take to get there? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally understand that. But no, that's amazing, man. Thank you for coming on. I so appreciate this conversation. This was amazing. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. But are you happy with Roger Berry? We're here with Eric Swinderman. Please go watch The Enormity of Life. It's on
Amazon, Tubi, if you
yeah,
want
Tubi is what I use. Yeah.
Apple TV, and all of your streaming services. Basically, you can find it. It's a good movie.
You're the man.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you again. Seriously, bro.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
Cool.
Today's podcast is brought to you by one of the absolute best real estate agents in the Cleveland market, Tom Sugar with Howard Hanna Real Estate. Tom's here to help you understand the home buying and selling process. He's here to ensure that you're also always going to get the best price, whether you're buying a home or whether you're selling a home, and his customer service skills are top notch. Give Tom a call at 216-406-2841. That's 216-406-2841. You can call or text him or visit his website, shugsells.com, SHUGSELLS.com. Visit Tom Sugar, everybody. He is the best.